Okay, Q&A number 2, let's get straight into it. Have I tried the Boss Katanas? I have very briefly. One of the schools that I teach at has a Katana 50 watt in there in their music room, and I teach a guitar ensemble there, and I've plugged that in and been really impressed. One of my students also has one of these smaller combos, I forget the rating, but he's bought that around, and I really like the brown setting on it. And it's funny that this question came up because I was speaking to another one of my students who has a Katana, and he basically said, hey, I'm not playing this that much. If you ever want to make any content with it, I can bring it around. And I'm pretty slammed for making videos at the moment. There's a whole bunch of stuff sitting around that I want to do clips of. But seeing as this has come up, maybe in the next fortnight or something like that, if I can borrow it, I'll do some videos with a Katana and show you how to pull some tones with it, because I really like them. Alright, this is a really good question. If I could have any guitar built by any manufacturer on earth, who would it be? Let me show you something really quick. So this thing, hopefully you can see the bits of it. I may have done a video with this before. You can see some of the wood going on there. It's pretty cool. My dad made this guitar, and this is made out of all Australian timbers. Obviously it's a PRS style shape. I'm obviously a big fan of PRS as well, but if I could have any builder make me another guitar, I just let my dad loose in a wood shop and basically, you know, give him the time, I think, because he does a lot of other things other than play around with and build guitars, and I love the guitars he builds, and I just wish he had more time to do it. So if I could have any builder do it, I'd just lock him away in a wood shop for about a year and see what he comes out with, because I think it'd be pretty cool. I've got a bunch of his other guitars sitting around as well, so I'll have to do a little feature on all of those at some point in the future. However, if we're talking about sort of mainstream guitar builders, I'm loving my STR at the moment. I just did a tour of the Japanese Deviser factory, and I think at some point in the next year I'm just going to order a custom spec guitar from them. So when I do, I'll do a video about it and I'll talk you guys through that whole process there. Otherwise, you know, I'd love, you know, if I had an infinite budget, to get someone like Paul Reed Smith to make me a guitar, just because I absolutely love his stuff as well. So yeah, there you go. A guitar that I will probably order, a guitar I'll probably have to kick my dad up the arse to make, and you know, the sort of nebulous pipe dream to get a custom-made PRS by the man himself. So what is a plec? Essentially, it is a CNC style machine that lets you do stuff like fret leveling with the guitar under string tension. So there's around like 40 to 50 kilos of, depending on the gauge of strings used, of course, tension on a guitar neck, which is quite a lot. You know, that's why you need a truss rod in a modern electric guitar. And when you take the strings off to level the frets, you can measure everything really nicely, but as soon as you put the strings on, they're applying all this extra pressure, which is going to throw all your careful measurements out. And the plec essentially lets you keep it under there while you do all these kind of things. It also has a bunch of like automated stuff. It can cut nuts, it can plane fingerboards. It's kind of awesome what it can do. If you want to learn more, I do have some videos about this machine. It's pretty cool. You can check out all the in-depth stuff over on my channel. Influences. Oh boy, this could be a big answer, but I will try my best to keep it brief. Essentially, the reason I started playing guitar was Thin Lizzy's Live and Dangerous album. Like a family friend gave me a copy of it when I was 13, and I didn't listen to it for about a year. And then I started listening to it about a year later, loved it, and you know, the advantages of having a bunch of guitars sitting around the house, I picked up a guitar and started trying to learn it. And I never really looked back from there. So Thin Lizzy was a big one. I wanted to be Scott Gorham, you know, he's just this like ultimate. When you look up rock star in the dictionary, I think of Scott Gorham, you know, long hair, Les Paul slung low, just tasty guitar playing. So he was probably my first big influence. And then I heard Stevie Ray Vaughan, and that totally changed my life, and I wanted to be Stevie Ray Vaughan for about 6 months, you know, playing a Strat and playing blues. And then I heard Gary Moore, and I wanted to be Gary Moore for about a similar amount of time. You know, he's still got the Blues album. Was, yeah, pretty hip, and I kind of got into his rock stuff. I really like Corridors of Power. That to me is just one of the most honest sounding rock guitar albums on there, and he's just playing his backside off on there. It just sounds like a Strat straight into a Marshall and just raw power. So big Gary Moore fan. Randy Rhoads was another one, the Aussie Tribute album, which I talked about in the last Q&A. Album, and obviously getting into, you know, all the incarnations of Ozzy's band. You know, Jakey Lee I really like, Zach, even guys like Joe Holmes and Gus G, I think great players. So all that kind of stuff. But I think the big thing, as I said in my like VHS Instructional Heroes video that I did a few weeks ago, hearing Paul Gilbert and hearing Yngwie Malmsteen really changed my life, because I didn't know that you could play that kind of stunt guitar that way and just play. It's not so much about like the fast playing with Paul and Yngwie and those kind of guys. It's the attitude and the aggression and like the conviction with which they play that really drew me to them. So yeah, when I was about 15, I really got into all the 80s shred stuff. Basically anything on Shrapnel Records I tried to find, and heavily got into that stuff for a few years. And that sort of led me into getting into, you know, the whole like metal thing, whether it was like power metal or prog metal, and then older prog rock like King Crimson and Yes and Genesis and all that kind of stuff. And I mean, obviously Dream Theater as well, and hearing bands like Symphony X, Michael Romeo still blows my mind. All that kind of stuff, I think as a guitar player really influenced me. But what happened when I was probably about 20, 21 years old is through all these kind of things, I noticed that all my favorite bands had really great singers and wrote really great songs. So I started to get more into the songwriting aspect of things, and I just started listening to stuff that wasn't strictly rock music. Like I said, I like a bunch of the old sort of prog rock stuff, but you know, just listening to singer-songwriters and listening to stuff from the 80s maybe that wasn't like as guitar heavy. This is sort of where Rush comes into my life as well, because it was like with every Rush album I heard, they did a different thing. And some of their 80s stuff, which is really keyboard heavy and really song oriented, I really fell in love with. So that started to really influence me as a writer. And like I said, I turned 20, 21, I joined a band. We started doing shows all around Western Australia. So I got that little taste of local touring, I guess. And I just got way more into the songwriting thing than the guitar playing thing for a few years, and you know, playing with Ragdoll and sort of learning what to do and what not to do, and you know, getting the opportunity to like tour places like the United States and tour Europe and meet all these different bands and hear all these different styles and different approaches. It just becomes this huge thing where it's like I can't say what I'm influenced by anymore, because I just love music so much, you know. I've been listening to loads and loads of like 80s synthwave stuff, bands like The Midnight and Time Cop 1983, super retro stuff. But then I love, you know, Ryan Adams and Butch Walker and Frank Turner and guys like that. These guys who they just emote, you know, and they write songs that you look at them on paper, they may not be amazing, but they just, their songwriting skills and their production skills and their arranging skills, they just have that thing which is undefinable. So that's always what I'm chasing when I'm listening to music, and whether it's, you know, listening to singer-songwriters like that, or you know, listening to stuff like I love Stravinsky and things like that, the sort of modern neoclassical stuff as well, which is really cool. And I also really like minimalist music, like getting turned on to guys like Steve Reich when I was at uni. So thanks to my buddy Mike for getting me into that kind of stuff. And yeah, it's just this beautiful thing, music. So many influences, and now doing the YouTube thing and being exposed to so many people, it's, you know, there's this whole guitar thing going on, whether it's Animals as Leaders or it's Pliny or it's Intervals and stuff like that. There's just so many people making really interesting, great guitar music at the moment that it's kind of inspiring me to try to make some music like that. So doing a new Ragdoll album at the moment, which is really kicking me up the backside to write some really punchy, heavy stuff with loads of attitude that I think people really like, and you know, write songs that are more than just like sex, drugs and rock and roll, stuff that's meaningful, and also this instrumental thing I want to spin off on the side. So there is the short answer. I'll have to do the long answer in a live stream and talk for about 3 hours. Does Fractal Audio pay me to make these videos? No, they don't. I just started making these videos because I would figure stuff out and go, you know what, this is pretty cool, I'm going to share it with some people. However, if you're interested in the Fractal Audio stuff, watch this space, because a pretty cool announcement coming in the next week or two, some new stuff to check out, so stay posted. So it's a bit sad to say, I actually haven't checked out an Evertune before. I have looked at them and watched a few videos, but I've never had the chance to play a guitar with one installed. And you know, I'm a big fan of the Axe effects for making like the whole non-guitar part of my rig so much simpler. I'm a huge fan of the technology of the Plek for setting up guitars properly. I really should get around to checking out this Evertune and seeing if it's actually going to make my life easier, because you know, I do a lot of recording, and doing a lot of recording means you do a whole lot of tuning your guitar between takes. So if it really does what it says, I might just have to get one and do a video and put it on one of my guitars or something like that. I know there's a bit of modification required, but luckily I know people who can help me with that. So yeah, maybe that'll be a good project in the future, the whole Evertune thing. If you guys are interested in seeing me do an Evertune retrofit to a guitar, or trying to find an Evertune equipped guitar to demo, let me know. If I get enough interest, I will definitely go and check one out and make some content with it. Any obscure guitar hacks that I know? I feel like I should know at least a few. It mostly comes down to, I think, so any obscure guitar hacks, there's plenty. The main one being, most of the time when you have to actually do stuff to your guitar, it's like in the middle of a tour, you play a show and I don't know, you cut your hand on something, you bleed all over your guitar and it goes into the pickups and something happens, and the next gig you're just getting no sound out of your guitar, or your guitar starts buzzing because you came from Australia in winter and you arrived in like Oklahoma in summer, and the temperature difference is so big that your guitar setup just goes everywhere. So less a guitar hack, but more like stuff you should always have, is something to adjust your guitar's truss rod. And if you're using a trem equipped guitar, something that can block up the trem, because I found that using guitars with, for example, when we went and toured Europe, I took my PRS Custom 24, which has obviously a trem on it that I never use. So I basically blocked it, and I took a bunch of foam with me as well to sort of like put underneath the springs, so that when I'm playing and when I stop playing, you don't hear the springs sort of in the background. I'll show you exactly what I did, because the guitar's right here. So to tighten everything up, this is my ultimate guitar hack. A little bit of foam, hopefully you can see that, a little bit of foam behind the nut so that the dead string can't vibrate there, and then hopefully this comes up. There's also foam behind the tremolo springs. So I found when I was like trying to play really tight, chuggy stuff, like if I was leaving gaps, that the springs would still ring out and they would like be just loud enough to trigger the gate, so I get amp hiss on the axe effects. So yeah, that's probably my best little guitar hack. Otherwise, always carry a truss rod adjustment tool, and get friendly with a soldering iron, because if you can sort out the electronics on your guitar, especially if you're on tour or if you're at a gig, then you never really have to worry. And I try not to worry too much when I'm on the road anyway. Plenty of questions about the cat this week as well, so let's throw them all over to him. There's one comment really equal one head scratch. Well, that's really cute, but you could answer the question. Come on, man, like, people are asking questions. They're way more interested in you than they are in me. I'm just a lackey, basically. They're not here to check it out, they're here to check you out. Do you have anything to say to them? What a jerk. Anyway, if you have questions for the next Q&A, get them in the comments here, or visit me on Facebook, or message them through to me, and I will see you guys at the next Q&A next Friday.